Saturday mornings were my favorite part of the week. Quiet house, sun coming through the windows, that half hour where it's just you, a cup of coffee, and no one's expectations yet. Lauren usually slept in, especially after a Friday night out with her coworkers, or so she told me. I liked the stillness, the normalcy. That morning started like any other. I padded barefoot into the kitchen, pulled my favorite mug from the rack, the chipped white one she keeps saying we should throw out, and brewed a cup of dark roast. The tablet we shared was sitting on the counter, screen dim but lit with notifications. I picked it up, mostly just to check the weather and email before starting the day. And then I saw it. A push notification from a hotel app, one I didn't even remember downloading. The kind with keyless room entry and fancy fonts. It caught my eye because of the words, "Your digital room key is active." That alone wouldn't have been a red flag, but the details below it made my stomach flip. Double occupancy. Check-in time, 8:42 p.m. Last night. Room 304. Some boutique hotel downtown with rooftop cocktails and designer soaps in the bathroom. I hadn't booked anything, and neither had Lauren, or so I thought. I opened the app fully. The reservation was under her account. Our account, technically, since the tablet was synced to both our profiles. The hotel reservation showed one night, Friday, for 2 people. That's when something shifted in me. The kind of lurch you feel when something snaps into place, and suddenly all the little background noises of life get too loud. I stood there for a minute, just staring at the screen, waiting for the world to make sense again. Lauren had told me she had a late work meeting Friday night. I didn't think much of it. She'd come home after midnight, said she grabbed takeout, wasn't hungry. I was half asleep on the couch when she walked in. She kissed my forehead and went straight to shower. I closed the app, told myself not to panic. Maybe it really was work-related. Maybe she'd been planning a surprise getaway for us. We'd been distant lately, sure, but she wasn't the cheating type. At least I didn't think she was. But then my eyes caught something else, on the kitchen island. A folded paper receipt, tucked beneath a small glass Lauren used for her vitamins. I pulled it out. Dinner for 2. A place called Rosa and Pine, a small Italian restaurant we'd gone to once on a double date with Scott. Not exactly Lauren's favorite, but high-end and cozy. 2 entrees, wine, dessert, signed and tipped by her. I stared at the timestamp, 9:11 p.m. Same night, right after the hotel check-in. A weird buzzing started at the back of my mind, the kind of static you can't unhear once it starts. Something was wrong. I walked back to the bedroom to get dressed, and as I passed the laundry basket by the bathroom door, I noticed something sitting right on top. A dark gray hoodie, men's size, definitely not mine. I picked it up. It was heavier than the kind I wore, a little more fitted. There was a faint cologne smell on it, clean and sharp, not my usual kind. Lauren never wore hoodies like this either, and I couldn't remember any guests being over recently. I held it for a few seconds, turning it over, feeling like an intruder in my own home. A growing pressure built in my chest, like I'd opened a door I shouldn't have, and now I couldn't close it. I set the hoodie back down and walked over to the table where my laptop was. Opened up our joint banking app. A few swipes later, I was staring at a charge from Thursday, a flower delivery. I almost skipped past it until I saw the delivery address. Not ours. It had been shipped to Scott. Scott. I just stared. Scott was my best friend from college. My roommate junior and senior year. My groomsman. The guy who helped me move into this house. He used to bring over 6-packs and talk about relationships like he couldn't wait to settle down. He and Lauren always got along. Too well, maybe, but I never thought anything of it. He had that charm, you know? The kind that could walk into any room and own it without trying. I used to joke that he was the more attractive one between us. But it was never serious. Never. And now I was looking at a receipt for flowers. A $94 bouquet, delivered to his apartment. From Lauren. And she never said a word. I didn't even know what emotion to settle on. Confusion. Anger? Embarrassment? I was cycling through them too fast to land anywhere. I didn't say anything right away when she came out of the shower, towel in her hair, scrolling through her phone like nothing was wrong. She gave me a quick smile. "Hey babe," she said, walking to the fridge. "We out of orange juice?" I didn't answer. I was still sitting at the table, tablet screen on, receipt in my hand. She turned and noticed the look on my face. Her smile faltered. "What's up?" I showed her the hotel notification first. She walked over, peered at the screen, then let out a short laugh. "Seriously, Ethan? You're spying on my hotel reservations now?" "I wasn't spying," I said. "It came up when I opened the tablet. It's under your account." "Because I was planning a surprise," she said, throwing her hands up like it was obvious. "Jesus, Ethan, can't I do anything nice without you assuming the worst?" I stayed quiet. She grabbed the tablet from my hand and scrolled through it. "You weren't supposed to see that. I was putting something together for us. It was going to be a whole weekend thing. Hotel, dinner, the works. You ruined it." Her tone had shifted. That's what struck me first. She wasn't concerned I saw the reservation. She was annoyed, as if I had crashed some big reveal and now I was the problem. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because it was a surprise, Ethan," she said, as if I were slow. "You always complain we don't do enough spontaneous stuff anymore, right? So I thought, okay, maybe I'll plan something. But apparently that's a crime." "And the dinner?" I asked, holding up the receipt. "You went last night. You told me you had a meeting." She blinked. Her mouth opened for a second, then closed. "I went to scope it out," she said finally. "I wanted to see the menu, check out the place before I booked anything. Again for us. But now you've got this whole detective thing going, and honestly, it's a little exhausting." I didn't believe her. Not really. But I wanted to, so badly. "And the hoodie in the laundry?" I asked. "Oh my God, Ethan," she said, grabbing a protein bar from the pantry. "That's Scott's. He dropped it off when he swung by Wednesday. I was gonna give it back." "And the flowers? To Scott's place?" She stopped. For just a second. It was subtle, but I saw it. Her eyes flicked away from mine. "Okay," she said slowly. "That was part of the setup. I wanted his help decorating the room. He has a better sense of aesthetics than you or me. Okay? I needed his advice on the vibe." "That doesn't explain the flowers." "I was thanking him," she said, her tone turning sharp, "for helping." Jesus, Ethan. You really are trying to make this something it's not. You're reading into everything like I'm on trial or something. I didn't say anything, just stared at her. She shook her head and scoffed. "You know what? This says more about you than me. You can't even handle the idea of me doing something thoughtful without twisting it into some jealous fantasy." That one stung, because for a split second I considered she might be right. She crossed her arms and stared at me like she was waiting for an apology. But I didn't give her one. I just nodded slowly, said, "Okay," and walked upstairs. She called after me once, but I didn't respond. I needed space, not because she'd surprised me, but because something in my gut had started whispering, and I didn't like what it was saying. After that morning, I started paying closer attention. Not in a paranoid way, at least that's what I told myself. I wasn't setting up cameras or tracking her phone, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something didn't add up. It wasn't the hotel key alone or the flowers to Scott. It was the way she deflected everything, how fast she flipped the blame, how suddenly I was the one who needed to answer for asking questions. That night, I lay awake while Lauren slept beside me, breathing slow and steady. I remember staring at the ceiling fan, spinning silently, shadows crawling along the walls. My chest felt tight, not in a dramatic way, just this quiet pressure that wouldn't let go, like something important had happened, and I'd been talked out of recognizing it. The next morning, Lauren got up early for hot yoga. It was her new thing, 3 or 4 times a week now, sometimes more. When I offered to go with her once, she laughed it off. "You'd hate it," she said, kissing me on the forehead like I was cute for even asking. "It's my me time." I never thought to question it until that morning. She left in a hurry, gym bag swinging, hair still damp from a shower. When she was gone, I walked into the bathroom to grab my watch and paused. Her perfume was different. She used to wear this light floral scent, something subtle. But this one was sharper, new, expensive smelling. I don't know much about fragrances, but this one was stronger, bolder. Not something you wear to sweat through downward dog poses. It wasn't just the perfume. It was her phone habits too. Subtle shifts. She used to be careless with it. Left it on the counter, sometimes screen up with texts popping in from friends. But lately it was always face down, silent. And when she picked it up, she'd turn slightly away, like she needed privacy just to check a notification. I noticed she started turning off the preview function, where I used to see a message from Tara. Hey girl, brunch Sunday? Now it just said message. No names, no previews, just a blank screen that stayed blank until she swiped it away. And it wasn't just once or twice. It was constant. I told myself it was nothing, that I was becoming one of those guys, the ones who obsess over things like when she last smiled at you or why her texts are shorter now. But every time I let something go, something new popped up to replace it. She started taking her laptop into the living room for client meetings. That wasn't unusual. Lauren worked remotely, and she often had Zoom calls. But what changed was how quickly she'd close her laptop when I walked in. Like she didn't want me to overhear. One night, I walked in with popcorn, thinking we might watch something together. She jumped like I'd startled her, slapped the lid shut and smiled too quickly. Meeting just ended, she said, already grabbing the remote. You read my mind, let's pick a movie. I didn't ask what the meeting was about. I didn't ask who she was talking to, but I started keeping a mental list. The second thing was cash. Lauren never carried cash. We used cards for everything: credit card rewards, cashback, split bills, synced apps. It was our system. But I started noticing small withdrawals. $60 here, $40 there. Always from ATMs near her yoga studio or downtown, never from anywhere near her actual errands. Once, I found a crumpled $20 in the pocket of a jacket she hadn't worn since February. I asked about it. Oh, she said, barely looking up from her phone. I've just been carrying a little on me lately. You never know. You never know what? I wanted to ask, but I didn't. I let it go. Then there were the shirts. At first, I thought I was misremembering. A light blue polo in the laundry that I didn't own. A white athletic tee, slightly too tight to be mine. Once I asked, she said they were from a charity box she was sorting through, part of a drive at her office. Don't put those in the wash, she said. They're not ours. But 2 days later, one of those same shirts was hanging in the back of our shared closet, still folded. Then came the passwords. She changed the PIN on her phone. That was a big one. We'd never been the couple that needed to know each other's passwords. We just didn't have secrets. But I used to know it, and one night when I picked up her phone to check the time, it vibrated and asked for Face ID. I looked at her, eyebrows raised. New PIN? I asked. She shrugged. Work thing. Some data protection policy. Everyone's updating security. I nodded slowly, pretending that made sense. But a few days later, I realized she'd changed her email password too. I only noticed because I went to add something to a shared folder we both accessed for vacation plans, and her login wouldn't sync anymore. When I mentioned it, she played it cool. Yeah, I got locked out of my old one and had to reset everything. Don't worry, I'll send you a new invite. She never did. The next time she went to the gym, I checked her side of the closet. I felt sick doing it. I didn't want to be this person, snooping around my own house. But I needed some kind of confirmation that I wasn't losing my grip. Everything looked normal, except for a small drawer I hadn't opened in years. Inside was a pouch with makeup, mini toiletries, and a travel-sized mouthwash. All new, all clearly used. Like a go bag. Not for emergencies, just quick cleanups. I sat on the bed for a long time after that. I wanted to believe there was an explanation for all of it. That this was just a coincidence pile-up, the way couples sometimes drift and collide. But it wasn't just a feeling anymore. It was a pattern. A web of half-truths and soft lies, wrapped in perfume and folded shirts. Then came the gym schedule. She started going at odd times, nights mostly. She said it helped her sleep. But the timing aligned too neatly with something else. Scott's travel schedule. Scott lived about 40 minutes outside Nashville, but he came into town once or twice a week. I knew that because he always texted me, even if we didn't hang out every time. Lately, those texts had stopped, but I still got the calendar invites, shared Google calendars from when we used to plan poker nights and watch parties. And I saw when he was in town for work. Those nights, Lauren always found a reason to leave. Gym, grocery run, errands she remembered at 8 p.m. The realization crept in slowly. Every new piece felt like another knot in my stomach. By this point, I didn't even trust myself. I didn't know if I was uncovering the truth or unraveling. But everything about our home had changed. Our rhythms, our routines. I felt like I was watching a movie where someone was replacing my life scene by scene, and I was the last one to notice. I tried to talk to her one night. Just tried to ask if she was okay. If we were okay. She smiled and told me not to be so sensitive. "We're fine," she said. "You're just in your head too much lately. Maybe you should start meditating again." Felt like talking to a mirror. Words coming back at me, nothing going through. So I started writing things down. Quietly. A little notebook I kept in my desk drawer. Not to accuse. Not to prepare for a fight. Just to prove to myself that I wasn't imagining this. Because if this was all real, then something was about to break. I don't know what made me come home early that day. Maybe it was intuition. Maybe it was just exhaustion. Mental fatigue from pretending things were fine when nothing felt right anymore. I was supposed to have a meeting that afternoon, but I canceled it without a real reason. I told my assistant I was feeling off, and I guess that wasn't a lie. I needed space. Not from work, but from the noise in my head. The constant hum of suspicion. The feeling that the ground under my life wasn't steady anymore. So I drove home. It was a Tuesday, middle of the week, still daylight out. I parked on the street instead of the driveway, like I didn't want to be noticed. Not by Lauren. Not by anyone. Just this quiet voice in my gut telling me to approach carefully. As I walked up the path, I pulled out my phone and checked the smart lock app. Something we had installed the year before for convenience. It logged every entry by code. There were separate profiles. Mine, Lauren's, a guest code for her sister, one for the cleaner. But the most recent entry caught me. Lauren guest code 2. Unlocked. 2:47 p.m. Guest code 2. It was hers. A separate one she'd set up just in case her main one ever glitched. I looked at the timestamp again. 15 minutes ago. I hadn't told her I was coming home. She had no idea. I slipped my phone into my back pocket and stood still in front of the door, trying to calm my breathing. I didn't have a plan. I didn't even know what I was expecting to find. I opened the door quietly. The house smelled different. Not bad, just prepared. There was a faint scent of vanilla, maybe sandalwood. A candle was burning in the hallway. Something we almost never did in the middle of the day. I stepped out of my shoes and listened. The house was quiet. No voices. No footsteps. But there was music playing softly, instrumental, jazzy, almost too polished. I walked down the hall toward the bedroom. That's when I saw it. 2 wine glasses on the nightstand. Half full. One of them had lipstick smudged on the rim. There was a jacket draped over the chair by the window. Dark navy. I didn't recognize it immediately, but the logo on the breast pocket gave it away. Scott's. My stomach dropped. I didn't go in. Not right away. I stood outside the doorway and just looked. The bed was made, but not with our usual sheets. Lauren had swapped them for the soft white linen ones we'd only used once, when her parents came to visit. There were candles on the dresser, unlit but set out like she'd planned a whole scene. It was deliberate, intentional, not some moment of weakness or lapse in judgment. This was prepared, and it hit me all at once. That sick clarity you hope never arrives. There was no misunderstanding anymore. No half-truth she could wrap in flowers and dismiss with a sigh. I turned around and walked back toward the front door. My hands were cold, and my throat felt dry. I reached for the doorknob, then paused. I heard footsteps upstairs. Not hurried, not sneaky, just casual movement. A soft laugh followed. Then her voice. It didn't sound guilty or nervous. Sounded warm. Like the kind of tone you use with someone you're used to. And that hurt more than anything. Because it meant this wasn't new. I opened the door and stepped outside. I didn't slam it. I didn't shout. I didn't want them to even know I'd been there. I walked back to the car and sat inside with the engine off, staring at the dashboard. The glass of the windshield was hazy with late afternoon sun, and I could see the reflection of the front of our house. It looked the same as always, but I didn't. I sat there for a long time, maybe 10 minutes, maybe 30. I'm not sure. I didn't cry. I didn't punch the steering wheel. I just shut down, like a fuse had blown, and all the lights in my head went out. Eventually, I drove away. Not home. Not to a friend's place. I didn't want to talk to anyone. I needed to think or not think. So I drove around the city, past the parks and the grocery stores and the bars we used to go to, past the first apartment we shared when we moved to Nashville. It all looked so familiar and foreign at the same time. Like my life was still here, but I wasn't in it anymore. I ended up at a diner near the river. One of those 24-hour places with peeling menus and too strong coffee. I slid into a booth, ordered nothing, and just stared out the window. I kept going back over everything. Every lie she'd told. Every deflection. Every time she made me feel like I was overreacting. Like I was imagining things. And worst of all, every time I believed her. I felt stupid. Not for loving her, but for giving her so many chances to tell me the truth. I don't know how long I stayed there. Eventually, I pulled out my phone and looked at the smart lock log again. Guess code 2 had been used again, this time to lock the door. 3:36 p.m. They were gone. I didn't go back to the house that night. I booked a short-term rental across town. Just a studio with a kitchenette and a view of the alley. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. Clean, empty, quiet. I sent Lauren a text, short and to the point. I saw the house today. Don't try to explain it. I'm not coming back tonight. No response. I didn't expect one. I sat on the edge of the rental's bed that night, staring at my bag. I hadn't even packed anything. Just my laptop, phone charger, a change of clothes from the gym locker. I didn't know what to do next. I didn't know how to be alone again. But I also knew I couldn't go back to pretending. The next day, she texted, "Ethan, please come home. I can explain." Then, "It's not what you think." Then, "We need to talk." I didn't answer. Couldn't. Because I wasn't angry. I was numb. She had made the bed, lit the candles, poured the wine. She had given Scott a guest code, set the scene, closed the laptop, turned off her notifications, and smiled in my face like nothing was wrong. So no, I didn't want to hear the explanation. Not the edited version. Not the spin. I didn't want to sit on the couch while she played defense and painted herself into a corner of victimhood. Because I'd seen the truth already. And once you see it, there's no unseeing it. There's just the decision of what to do next. The next few days passed in a strange kind of silence. Not the peaceful kind you get in the early morning or on a quiet hike, but the cold, sterile quiet of a house you no longer trust. I didn't return. Lauren texted twice more after the first day, then stopped. No calls, no emails, no tearful voicemails or unexpected visits. I half expected her to show up at the rental, but she didn't. Maybe she knew better. Or maybe she was just too busy figuring out what came next with Scott. I started working remotely from the small table near the window. It looked out over a brick wall with ivy climbing up it. Not much of a view, but it gave me something to focus on when the days blurred together. I didn't tell anyone what had happened. Not yet. I wasn't ready for the well-meaning questions, the sympathy, the endless suggestions to talk it out or hear her side. I had heard enough. Instead, I started writing things down again. Not in the little notebook I used for suspicion, but in a fresh one. Clean pages. I wrote without structure. Just thoughts, loose and scattered. What do I want now? Who am I outside of her? How do I start over when everything feels used? I didn't have answers, but it felt better to ask the questions out loud, even if just to a blank page. On my third night in the rental, I couldn't sleep. I walked a few blocks to a small corner bookstore cafe I remembered passing once, years ago. It was still open. Soft jazz playing inside, warm light spilling onto the sidewalk. There was something inviting about it. I stepped in, mostly just for something to do, maybe a coffee if they had it. She was behind the counter, restocking a shelf of used paperbacks. Light cardigan, hair up, focused. She didn't look up right away, just asked without turning around, "Help you find something?" I said, "Not really sure what I'm looking for." She smiled at that, standing and brushing her hands off on her jeans. That's kind of our motto here. Aimless browsing encouraged. Her name was Nora. She didn't push conversation, didn't ask why I looked like I hadn't slept in days. Just offered me a cup of house coffee on the house and asked if I wanted a window seat or a booth. I took the window. She handed me a paperback from a nearby display. "You look like you need something old and predictable. This one's a safe bet." It was Steinbeck. I didn't read a single word of it that night, but I read her name tag twice. I started going back every few days. First just for the quiet, then for the familiarity. Nora never pried, never asked more than "How's your week?" or "Want your usual?" Eventually, I learned she volunteered at a local animal shelter on weekends, worked mornings at the library, and helped run the cafe part-time because she liked the rhythm of it. "I like places where people are allowed to be quiet," she told me once. "Not everything has to be loud to matter." I didn't say much in return. I just nodded, and she seemed to understand. After a week, I went back to the house. Lauren wasn't home. I used my original smart code and walked through the room slowly. Everything was clean, too clean, like she'd tidied up in a hurry to impress someone or hide something. My closet still had clothes in it. The drawers hadn't been touched. She hadn't moved anything of mine. But the energy in the house was different. There was no warmth, no scent of dinner, no music, just the hum of the fridge and the echo of my footsteps on the hardwood floor. I walked into the bedroom and stood at the foot of the bed. The sheets had been changed again. Some new pattern I didn't recognize. The wine glasses were gone. The candles were gone. But I could still feel it, the shape of the betrayal lingering like smoke. I didn't sleep there. Instead, I packed a few more bags, clothes, books, documents. I took down the framed photo of our wedding that still hung in the hallway. Not because I wanted to keep it, but because I didn't want it left behind. Felt wrong, letting it sit there like nothing had changed. I left a note on the kitchen table. "Lauren, I'll be handling the next steps through email. Please don't contact me directly. Ethan." I changed the code on the smart lock. Not out of spite, just boundaries. And then I left. I didn't go back to the rental. Not yet. I drove to the shelter where Nora volunteered and asked if they needed help. She was surprised to see me, but she didn't ask why I showed up. Just handed me a clipboard and pointed me toward the back, where the dogs were. "Pick one with a calm temperament," she said, grinning. "They match your vibe." His name was Jasper, a mix of golden retriever and whatever made him too awkward for adoption. Big paws, quiet eyes, shy like he didn't trust people much anymore. I liked him immediately. We walked the perimeter of the shelter 3 times before he leaned against my leg. I stayed late, helping with food bowls and cleanup. Nora worked the front desk, humming quietly to herself while organizing adoption paperwork. It wasn't a glamorous place. Concrete floors, faint smell of bleach and kibble, but it felt real, honest. That night, I sat in my car with Jasper in the passenger seat, wondering how I got here. Alone, displaced, heartbroken, but strangely clear. No more questions, no more half answers, just truth in its most painful form. The next day, I emailed Lauren. "We need to discuss how to divide the finances. I've set up a separate account. Let's keep everything going forward through writing. Please send me the paperwork you mentioned last spring about the Roth IRA transfer." Short, neutral, clean. She responded 5 hours later. "I understand. I'll start putting the files together. I hope you're okay." That was it. No apologies. No explanations. Just the kind of reply you send to a colleague after missing a meeting. I didn't reply. That weekend, Nora and I walked dogs together. It wasn't a date. Not really. But it was something. We talked about books and movies and the weather. I mentioned I was going through something, and she didn't press. She just nodded. When we finished, she said, "You should come by the bookstore again. We got a new batch of old paperbacks. Not fancy, but they've got good energy." So I did. We didn't flirt. We didn't talk about relationships. There was no undercurrent of romance. Just calm, comfort, presence. The thing about betrayal is it makes everything feel like a test. Every smile, every word, every gesture feels loaded. But with Nora, it was like resetting the meter. Just quiet company, honest laughter, no hidden motives. Over the next few weeks, I found rhythm again. Not happiness, not yet, but routine. Morning walks with Jasper, afternoon emails, evenings with a book and a borrowed chair at the bookstore cafe. Sometimes Nora joined me, sometimes she didn't, and both were okay. For the first time in months, I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. I wasn't watching her face for signs of guilt. I wasn't replaying every text or wondering why the door was locked. There was nothing to analyze, nothing to decode, just people, just now. And it didn't fix everything, but it gave me room to breathe. A few weeks after I moved out, Lauren posted a photo of herself and Scott on Instagram. It was one of those filtered rooftop bar sh*ts. Golden hour light, blurred skyline in the background, 2 wine glasses front and center like they were the real subjects. She had her hand on his arm, nails freshly done, smile calculated. Scott was looking at the camera but not smiling, like he didn't want to be there or didn't realize the photo was being taken. The caption? "Some chapters begin unexpectedly." That was it. I stared at the screen for a long time. She didn't tag him, didn't tag the place. But I knew that view. Everyone local did. It was the top of the Oakhaven Hotel downtown. Same place that had popped up on our shared tablet that morning not so long ago. I didn't comment, didn't send it to anyone. Just closed the app and put my phone face down on the counter. But people noticed. That's the thing about shared lives. There's always overlap. Friends, coworkers, old college roommates who still follow both of you out of habit. You can't torch a bridge in public and expect no one to see the smoke. The fallout started quietly. First it was a mutual friend, Jenna, texting me late that night, "Hey, is that Scott in Lauren's post? Please tell me that's not what I think it is." Then came another message the next morning. "I don't want to get involved, but that's low. You okay?" By lunchtime, a third. "Dude, I had no idea. I'm so sorry." It spread fast. Lauren wasn't exactly a social media addict, but when she posted, people paid attention. And this one, this image of her wrapped up with my best friend, smiling in cocktail hour bliss after ghosting me and brushing off any explanation, didn't go down the way she thought it would. I heard later from a friend of a friend that one of her coworkers actually unfollowed her right after. Another commented something vague like, "Hope you're doing what's right, not just what's easy." She deleted the post within 48 hours. But by then, the damage had already rippled out. Even if she tried to scrub the evidence, the impression was permanent. I didn't gloat, didn't *T, didn't join the Whisper network. I just watched it unfold quietly, like someone flipping through a fire escape drill in reverse. Start with the explosion and work backward. It was weird, though. I didn't feel triumphant. I wasn't vindicated or smug. If anything, I felt tired. That picture wasn't a confession. It was a rebranding. Lauren wanted to be seen as someone moving forward, maybe even someone brave, choosing herself, rewriting her narrative, starting fresh. But it didn't land that way. People could read between the lines. They remembered what we were before. They remembered Scott. And even if no one said it directly, the subtext was everywhere. I focused on the practical. I met with a lawyer. We'd never officially filed anything before this. No legal separation, no divorce proceedings. But now it was time. The lawyer was a woman named Callie. Mid-40s, no-nonsense energy. I liked her immediately. She asked me to walk her through the situation, and I kept it clean. Married 8 years. No kids. Joint mortgage, joint account, one shared credit card, no business assets. She was unfaithful. I moved out. She nodded and scribbled notes. Documentation. I handed her the folder I'd been building for weeks. Printouts. Hotel receipts. The smart lock logs. Screensh *TS of the deleted Instagram post. Just in case. I didn't want to *P***nize any of it. I just wanted clarity. Proof. Boundaries. I don't want this to be ugly, I told her. I just want it done. She nodded. Clean break. That's smart. I'll start drafting. We filed for divorce 2 days later. Lauren's reply came through her attorney. She didn't contest it. She didn't even try to delay. The split went into full motion. Financial accounts frozen, passwords changed, my name removed from shared utilities. I forwarded all communication through the lawyers. There were no calls, no texts. I wanted it clinical, and she didn't push back. It was like we were finally on the same page. This was over, and neither of us wanted to drag it out in the mud. I didn't check her social media after that. I didn't need to know how she was spinning it. Whether she was posting poetic song lyrics or selfies with caption mantras about growth and independence. The people who mattered already knew the truth. My parents were surprisingly calm about everything. I hadn't told them the full story at first, just said Lauren and I were taking space. But after the paperwork was filed, I sat down with them over dinner and told them everything, simple, factual. My mom didn't cry. She just placed her hand over mine and said, "We're proud of how you're handling it." My dad asked one question. "Are you sure you're not rushing into anything?" I nodded. "I've never been more certain of anything." He didn't argue. They invited me to stay at their place for a few days just to reset. I declined. I needed my own space, but I appreciated the offer. It was the first time in weeks I didn't feel like I was floating without a tether. Nora noticed the shift in me. Not immediately, but gradually. One afternoon at the bookstore cafe, she slid a fresh cup of coffee in front of me and said, "You're standing straighter." I smiled. Didn't know I was slouching. She shrugged. "You were carrying a lot. Seems like you put some of it down." I didn't explain. I didn't have to. That was the thing with her, nothing had to be performed. We could sit in silence for 30 minutes and not have it feel like a void to fill. I didn't know what we were. We weren't dating. We weren't not. But the lines didn't matter. I wasn't rushing into anything, and she wasn't asking me to. One night, after closing up the cafe, we walked together through the neighborhood. Cool breeze. Street lights buzzing. Jasper trailed along beside us on the leash, tail wagging like he belonged to both of us now. She said, "You know, you don't have to tell me what happened, but if you ever do, I'll listen." I said, "Thanks. I might take you up on that. Someday." She smiled. Someday works. I didn't look back. Not at the house, not at the photos, not at the version of myself that thought everything was fine because the kitchen was clean and the bills were paid. I wasn't that guy anymore. The divorce wasn't dramatic. No courtroom shouting, no teary breakdowns. Just signatures, settlements, paperwork. Lauren kept the house. I took my portion and moved forward. No alimony. No bitterness. But in that final meeting, when the documents were signed and we shook hands with lawyers, I looked at her for the first time in weeks. She looked tired. Not physically, her hair was perfect, makeup on point, but her eyes were different. Dull, maybe, or just worn. I didn't say anything. She opened her mouth like she wanted to, then closed it again. And that was it. We walked out of the building and down separate hallways. And just like that, the chapter was closed. No applause. No clean emotional bow. Just the end.